Alright, hi random people on the internet, from Nuevo or from wherever you are, whoever's watching this. This is a short, but hopefully not too short, guide to composting and a summary of different ways to do it. I'm hoping that this will be helpful to people who come to the farmer's market on Friday and come talk to me and ask me questions. This can be like a little follow-up, or just to anybody who wants a short summary about composting. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on everything I'm going to talk about, but I've been hot composting for a long time, and I've just started doing some worm composting, so I'm fairly familiar with that. And I've had chickens for about a year, and I've been integrating compost and chickens for a while, so I'm not an expert about everything, but I know enough about compost to I think I said everything I needed to about my credentials. I mean, I don't know, the credentials are right here. Here's a big compost pile that's pretty much finished and it's been managed successfully, and chickens are enjoying it and helping with it and whatnot. So, okay, look at the description for several different pages I consulted in making the pamphlet and putting this guide together. Hopefully the rooster won't screw this up too much. He usually quiets down once he gets used to me being here. We'll see if he attacks me. So yeah, this is more of an overview, so check out those links for more details about specific types of composting you might want to try. So I'm going to mention, let's see, 4 different methods. Hot composting, cold composting, trench composting, even though this is actually a method I've never tried, but I found some good sources, and it seems like a good suggestion for people who don't like some of the other methods I talk about. And then indoor worm composting and outdoor worm composting, actually. And also integrating them with a chicken yard. Then I'll talk about what you can and can't compost and discuss a few common problems. If you run into more problems, feel free to ask me in the comments or come to the farmer's market on Friday to ask me in person. Okay, first, the most important thing, composting is easy. I make it complicated, I spend a lot of time on it, but that doesn't mean it's not easy. All you have to do is pile up a mix of browns and greens. I'll talk about those in a sec. Make sure it's wet, but not too wet. I would say that's what this is. You can see it's moist, but not drenched or anything. And make sure it has oxygen, unless, and this is something I won't get into at all, unless you're making a methane digester, which you can make to like heat your home with and cook with and whatnot, but I don't know anything about those, so I won't talk about them. Okay, it's easy. Pile leaves up in the fall. Add grass clippings, weeds that haven't gone to seed. That's important if you're not going to heat the pile up. Unless you want to spread weeds in your compost, I don't know. Let's see. Add kitchen scraps as you get them, and you can otherwise leave it alone. Pile leaves up, add stuff as you get it. That's it. Okay. And anyway, as I've sort of mentioned just now, compost has 4 basic needs. Browns, which are carbon-rich materials like leaves, that's the main thing I use. Wood chips, sawdust, shredded paper, stuff like that. Low nitrogen, high carbon. That's what the bulk of your compost should be. Then it also needs greens, which are nitrogen-rich materials like kitchen scraps, coffee grounds, grass clippings, garden and lawn waste, and herbivorous animal manures. Unless you really know what you're doing, you don't want to compost stuff like dog poop or cat poop, but chicken poop is fine as long as it gets hot, rabbit poop, etc. You also want to make sure it has moisture, enough, but not too much. You don't want it to be drenched, you just want it to be wet. I've always seen the advice that it's like a wrung out sponge, and I mean, I think that's good advice. You just kind of need to get used to. You kind of need to practice and figure out what's right. If you squeeze it, you really shouldn't get water out, but it should still feel damp. Mix all this stuff together, wait for bacteria, fungus, worms, and other organisms to move in, and eventually you'll have compost. Let's see, I've already mentioned the simplest method, cold composting. And actually I'm going to go to another area. He doesn't like me being in here. He's very noisy. I'm going to go to another area to talk about cold composting. Cold composting combines basically all three methods: fungal, bacterial, and vermicomposting, or worm composting. That's what I have here. I actually take kitchen scraps from the La Tropicana Mexican restaurant in Newaygo. It's actually what I have right here. I'll add these to it in just a minute. But basically I started this out. For years now I've been collecting leaves from people in the area. So these leaves right here have just been sitting in big piles for, I think these have been sitting for 2 or 3 years. So basically I just piled them up and have gradually been adding these Mexican food scraps. So this pile did get hot for a little while. I think it got up to 120 degrees or something like that, but it's been going for maybe 6 weeks and it's mostly cooled off. So I started on this end. That got hot. Then I started working this way, and this is what I would call a windrow because it's a long, skinny compost pile instead of a just a big round pile. So I started there, got that hot, and then have slowly been adding scraps this way without really mixing it as you would do in hot composting. So it gets cold, and then I actually, over here, further over, this last section never got hot at all. I just emptied out some of my worm bin, the worms in my worm bin, and I added them there and mixed them with leaves. And so as this cools and decomposes, the worms are going to move in and slowly eat it, and obviously bacteria will continue breaking it down, but so will fungus and worms, and so this is a combination of all three methods. Let me see. This obviously did heat up, but to do cold composting it might not heat up at all because you don't have a lot of volume. You start off with a lot of brown material like leaves or wood chips, and then you slowly add little bits of scraps as you get them. Whereas with hot composting, you add everything together at once, and the bacteria work on it a lot all at once, and so generate a lot of heat. But cold composting is low maintenance. Make a pile of leaves, add your scraps or weeds as long as they haven't gone to seed, grass clippings, coffee grounds, all that kind of stuff. Just add them as you go, and it'll take a long time, but you'll get compost, and then you're not sending those valuable materials to the landfill. It's smart to also add specialized composting worms like red wigglers. There are places around here. Look in the description for their names and websites. There's also places online you can order them from. But keep in mind that they don't survive Michigan winters unless you warm them with hot compost. So keep that in mind. You might have to buy them every year if you just have cold compost, because they'll compost your stuff for a year and then they'll die in the Michigan winter. Let's see. Okay, so why not? I'll just add these kitchen scraps right now and show you how I do it, because it's really exciting to watch. Some guy dumping out a bucket. there we go. Sometimes there'll be things in there that the chickens like, and so I pick those out and give them to them. I actually initially gave these scraps to the chickens just completely, but they started getting sick because it was too many carbohydrates. It just wasn't good nutrition for them to be eating that much rice and bread and tortillas and stuff like that. But I do occasionally pick out things that the chickens like. Like the other day, there were a couple heads of lettuce that I picked out and gave to my chickens, and there was some meat that I gave to my chickens. But don't take my word for any of the chicken nutrition information. I'm fairly new to chickens, so do your own research about that. Just make sure you keep your chickens safe. But they do like digging through compost. So actually, I forgot to mention one other thing. Pests do get into compost piles like this, especially this one where I include meat scraps. Like right here, there are bones that are in there. So obviously raccoons really enjoy this. They come to it regularly. So if that's a problem for you, make sure you don't put stuff like that in, and or get a bin that will keep them from getting in at all. But yeah, with this, I just dump it, mix it in a little. And then grab some fresh leaves, add them on top. And I'll pile this all back up later because it does smell pretty bad. Meat, as it decomposes, it doesn't smell very good. All right, did I say everything about that? Okay, now back to the other compost area. Okay, now I'm back. For both cold composting and hot composting, you have a few different options for how to structure them. As you can see, I just prefer this method, a pile on the ground. It's easy, there's nothing to get in your way. The chickens can get into it. I pile it up, excuse me there, I pile it up. It's hard to do with my phone in my hand, but I need a script. I'm terrible at doing stuff like this without a script. Pile it up, mix it, pile it up. They'll come in and kick it down. Hopefully they'll do it in this video, but I don't know. They're unpredictable. Let's see, a pile on the ground, as I was saying, that's what I like, but it has problems. It doesn't have as much exposure to oxygen. Let me pan over here and show this real quick. Let's see. This right here, this is one method that works just fine. It's a ring of fencing, compost piled into it. It has more exposure to oxygen all along the sides and on top. This is something actually I use. I've put finished compost in here, and I just yesterday or the day before, added worms on top, so worms can start to go in and work on that finished hot compost and breed and build up their numbers, and then hopefully they'll eventually spread into this whole chicken area to help me with composting and to help feed the chickens. But yes, this is one method. This gets you more oxygen and it helps keep pests out. But I'll pan back over. So yeah, bins help you get more oxygen to your pile, and they help keep pests out. I've actually looked around here. I haven't seen any bins sold at local hardware stores. I even looked on like the Home Depot and Lowe's websites. I didn't see any that were available in stores. So that seems like if you want a plastic bin or a specialized composting bin or a tumbler, that seems like something you're going to have to order. But you can also use pallets. I know like the classic compost bin method is just to take 3 pallets and connect them together to make like a bay and put your compost in that. Some people make 3 bays. They make one for their freshest compost, and then they move it to the next one, and then eventually move it to a third one where it's mostly finished. Presumably worms move into that one. But I've actually never used a bin other than that one I showed you right there, just a ring of fencing. I like piles on the ground. Okay, so yeah, what I do, actually the most important part of my composting, I would say, the type of composting I have the most experience with anyway, is hot composting. That involves putting a bunch of materials together all at once. You combine browns and greens, carbon-rich materials with nitrogen-rich materials all at once. You need to get it a fairly decent size, about 1 cubic yard at least, 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. Make sure it's moist, make sure it has oxygen, and the Berkeley method says to assemble it, leave it for 4 days, and then turn it every 2 days, and you can have finished compost very fast. I don't tend to turn it every 2 days. That's a lot of work. I mean, this pile here is like 8 feet wide by 2 or 3 feet high by 25 feet long, so it's a big job to move the whole thing. It's 1 or 2 hour job to do that, so it just doesn't happen. But the chickens help me with it. Let's see, you mix it that often because it helps give it a fluffy structure and gets oxygen to it while you're turning, and helps keeping it from getting too hot. If it goes over 160 degrees, it can kill the composting bacteria, and then they have to start over. Keeping it moist, you can do that in a few ways. You can structure it, like you could, instead of making it a pile that slopes down shedding rain, you could pile it so that the middle is flat, or a basin, so that moisture seeps into it. You can soak it down as you're assembling it, or the opposite. You can cover it with a tarp to keep the moisture out if it's already wet enough, or use the lid to a bin if you buy one of them. Like I mentioned, after I finish my hot composting, I've started moving it into rings to let worms move in and finish it. And I also think it's a good idea just to let it rest in general, to mellow out. Okay, next up is trench composting. Like I said, this is a method that I've never tried, but check out the links in the description to see, where I got my information from and to get more details. But the basics are, it's very simple. You bury kitchen scraps at least a foot underground. So if you have 6 inches worth of kitchen scraps, you dig an 18 inch, I was about to say 18 feet deep, 18 inch deep hole, put the 6 inches of kitchen scraps down, and then put 12 inches of soil back on top. You really want to make sure it's at least 12 inches deep to make sure that critters don't get in. And from what I read, you can plant right into it. Okay, now I'll go inside to talk about worm composting. Worm composting is great for people who don't have space outdoors to do composting. If you're in an apartment or something and don't have a yard, this would be a great method for you. Or if you want to keep your compost going over the winter. I actually, before I learned how to hot compost over the winter, I actually used to store my kitchen scraps in buckets, and they would freeze over the winter, and then in the spring I would compost them. But having a worm bin is a much simpler way to keep it going over the winter. I'm fairly new to vermicomposting, so I don't have a ton to say about it, but the simple version is you get a bin that has aeration and drainage. Actually, this is a bad example because this doesn't have drainage, but it seems to work just fine for me. My worms seem perfectly happy, and actually the bottom part really doesn't seem that wet to me. But everything I've read suggests having drainage at the bottom, so that's what I'm going to recommend to you. But also, just show you that if you don't have that, well, it can work too, as long as you don't keep it too wet. So yeah, get a bin with aeration and drainage. This has aeration on the top. It's just a terrarium, so it just has a screen. I don't know if you can see that in the video. Fill it with bedding. My bedding is actually, this is finished hot compost. I hot compost it first, and then I bring it in here and let the worms go through it. I actually have some wood chips at the bottom, but it's mostly compost there. And I just emptied it out in preparation for this video in the composting workshop on Friday. So that's why it's so empty. It was pretty full before that. Let's see. Bedding, get composting worms. You're really going to want red wigglers. I've ordered from Country Roots. I think they're in Paris, Michigan, but they actually delivered to my house here in Newaygo. There's also a place in Fremont. Check the description for that, for a link to that place. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, and for some reason I didn't put that in my notes. But yes, bedding, which I use finished hot compost that really needs some more resting time. You can use wood shavings, you can use shredded leaves or even whole leaves. Worms are okay with those as long as they don't get too matted. And then just add kitchen scraps as fast as the worms eat them. You'll obviously want to start small and see how quickly they eat them and go from there. But it's pretty simple, pretty low maintenance. I mostly just ignore them, but it's also fun to say that I have, 1,000 pet worms in my house. Okay, now back outside to talk about a few more things. Now back to the main chicken yard compost area to talk about a couple more things. First, things that you can and can't compost. Technically, anything organic will make compost. And by organic, I don't mean like stuff grown on an organic farm or that uses organic practices. I mean like a more technical sense. Material that comes from anything alive. I mean, in my pile, I have a deer skull over there. I mean, I found an opossum just on the road outside my place. I put it in the compost. That stuff doesn't bother me at all. If you come through my compost area, you'll find, just to be weird, I'll show them off, but I mean, I have bones all over the place. I swear none of them are human. But yeah, anything that was ever alive can be composted, and that's pretty much how I operate. I don't really worry about it because the pile gets hot and kills off any of that stuff. But if you're going to do cold composting, you need to be more careful with that. Or even if you're doing hot composting, if you're new to composting, you should probably hold off on some of that stuff just to get more experience before you try. They can attract pests. Like I showed you in my other area, raccoons come through that cold compost pile pretty much every night. And so every day I have to pile it back up, which isn't a problem for me, but it might be a problem for you. If you're new or worried about pests, you should avoid animal products like meat or dairy. They do smell bad. Even if you know what you're doing, they do smell bad. They attract pests and can cause pathogens like E. coli or salmonella to remain in your pile. Worms, if you're just focused on worm composting, worms don't like onions, garlic, meat, dairy, oily foods, or citrus. I guess there's an oil in the skin of citrus fruits that actually hurts them. And then also bread, rice, or other foods that quickly get moldy might also cause problems in a worm bin, just because the worms won't eat them fast enough, and so they'll get gross before the worms get to them, and you don't really want that in your house. So you can put them in, but be aware of those kinds of problems that they would cause. But of course, if you're cold composting outside, these last things that the worms simply don't like are okay. If you're cold composting outside, onions, garlic, citrus, bread, and rice are fine. So yeah, basically to go with the things that you can and should add, both for cold or hot composting, leaves. Shredded leaves do break down faster, but you can use whole leaves. They'll break down eventually. To shred leaves, I use the lawnmower with the side discharge. I basically just line leaves up in a long, just have a long line of leaves, and then I run the mower back and forth over them and shoot the shredded leaves off to the side. And that works pretty well. It's a lot of work, but it does, you know, it does a pretty good job. So for cold or hot composting, leaves are a great thing to add, or other browns if you have access to wood chips or a lot of sawdust or a lot of cardboard or paper that you don't mind shredding. Those are good. Weeds, as long as they haven't gone to seed. Grass clippings, coffee grounds, and kitchen scraps are a great place to start. Like I said, it's super easy to get started. So pile leaves up, pile those things up, and you're good to go. Okay, now we'll talk about some common problems. It smells bad. I would guess this is like the most common complaint people have about compost. It smells bad. This could have a few different causes. Might mean your pile is too wet, and so it's like getting compacted, and like some of it is not getting oxygen, and when it's not getting oxygen, it turns anaerobic, and anaerobic bacteria are just stinky to our noses. So if you have that problem, either mix it up or add more browns like shredded leaves, and mix those in, and that'll take care of it. It could also be because the pile is too green. There's too much nitrogen in the pile, and you might notice that it smells like ammonia. If it smells like ammonia, then that probably means there's too much nitrogen in there and it's off-gassing as ammonia. So you want to mix in more browns to have it more balanced, because that ammonia is a useful component that will go into the compost, and it's just being wasted if it's off-gassing like that. Let's see. Also, if it goes anaerobic, that means it's producing methane, which is a much worse greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide that a properly managed pile off-gasses. And it's just, I don't know, it's just bad. You don't want to be producing methane. Another cause for a bad smell is, of course, that you put animal products in, and those just, they stink in compost, so the only advice there would be to bury them under more browns, mix them in browns, and make sure, you know, there's maybe a foot of browns covering them, and then you should be good. Okay, another problem. Something's getting into my compost. As I wrote on this, some animals see your compost as a delicious buffet. Make sure these materials are buried under enough browns, or find an enclosure that will keep them out. I suppose that speaks for itself. You know, animals love the things that are in your compost, and you just have to take steps to keep them out or to make sure they don't find it. Flies are everywhere. Make sure any of the green materials are buried under enough browns. Kind of the same advice to previous problems. If you're going for hot composting and your pile won't heat up, make sure you have enough materials. Make sure that you have the right ratios. You want to make sure it's an equal, you have the browns and greens in equal parts to like maybe 4 times as many browns. I go a little bit heavier on the browns, and my piles don't get quite as hot as they could, but still makes great compost. Also make sure you have the right moisture level. Make sure it's damp but not soaked. That's just something you kind of need experience with, playing around with. I'm still working on getting the moisture levels and the ratios right, honestly. Another problem, my worm bin is gross. Then the solution is probably that you've added things worms don't like, so they're avoiding, and then they're rotting in other ways. Or you've added too much food and the worms don't get to them fast enough. The solution then is to, probably take the gross stuff out and throw it into an outdoor compost pile, or if you have no other options, just throw it away. And then add less until their population catches up. They will breed and expand, and there will be more worms, and you just kind of have to pay attention to it and add the right amount. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. If not, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. I hope to see you at the farmer's market this Friday. What is that, the 5th or the 6th? Friday, June 6th, it looks like. So I hope to see you there at around 2 o'clock, I think. Ask me questions there or in the comments. And I'll have pamphlets to get out, and I don't know, I'll have a little setup. Still working on it, but you'll see how it is. Camera cut out right at the end, so I have to repeat a couple things. Still working on the setup for the farmers market, but it'll be nice. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Hope you are too. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Have and Flow Coffee Company in Newaygo. I get their coffee grounds and other scraps and add them, you know, twice a week to this pile. And also to La Tropicana Mexican restaurant. I get their scraps as well. The chickens liked them at first. They enjoy some of what they get. Other stuff goes into a cold composting pile, as I showed you. All right, thanks for watching.